Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got something kind of unique on the table. It's actually something you don't see very often. It's a budget pistol with a red dot that came that way from the factory. We've not modified this. This is exactly the way the gun comes from the factory. It comes with the cutout pre-milled into the slide, and according to their website it comes pre-installed. In this particular case, it didn't. It came in a little cardboard box inside the case, but it came with it, and I had to put it on. It's just 2 screws. So let's go ahead and first make sure this thing doesn't want to bite, which it doesn't. But this is the SCCY CPX-2, which has been around for a long time. The CPX-1 and 2 series have proven to be pretty reliable, and they've proven to be pretty popular. The only difference between a 1 and a 2 is the 1 has a manual thumb safety and the 2 doesn't. But overall, they're pretty simple, but a pretty high quality little pocket gun. This one MSRP is for $339, and it includes the red dot, which of course the camera really distorts the dot. It is a nice clear crisp dot. If we get that out of the way. It is a nice clear crisp dot when you're looking at it. Cameras don't tend to like red dots. The only thing we have noticed is there is a little bit of magnification distortion. You know, most red dots are 1x, and I believe this one is 2, but it's got a little bit of a magnification effect, probably unintentional, but that has resulted in a little distortion when you move the pistol around, but not enough that caused any issue lining it up and actually, firing it. And this cover that you saw me pop off in the beginning does come with it. The red dot has no controls. Basically, you put the battery in it, it's on. It does auto adjust for brightness based on ambient light, and it will turn itself off. Get all the cat hairs off it. It will turn itself off automatically when it's dark. It lists about 20,000 hours of battery life. So if you keep it in a dark place or keep the cover on it when it's not in use, you're not going to be changing the battery very often. It's only 2 screws to remove it and replace it, and it comes with all of the little Allen wrenches to remove it, as well as you've got your elevation and windage adjustments on the side. This one came close out of the box. The windage was pretty much right on. Elevation was a little bit off, so I had to tweak the elevation a little bit to line it up, which really, it took 1 or 2 adjustments, and I was where I wanted to be. And of course, the windage and elevation are mechanical adjustments, so if you replace the battery, it goes dead. As long as you put it back on the same, you won't have to re-zero it, or shouldn't have to. It does have a nice white dot front sight, which of course if you're using the red dot won't come into play. You use the dot, not the sight. But you'll see that it has a bit of a gutter in the back. So if for some reason the red dot were to fail, you can line up the gutter with the front sight and still get on your target. Now we did have one instance with this, and I think it was probably the battery just seating. I may not have gotten it clipped in place right. While firing it, the red dot went blank. I failed over to the gutter and the sight, pulled the trigger again, and the red dot lit back up, and then it worked fine after that. So I think it is kind of important when you put it together. The battery goes up underneath it. You do have to remove it to put the battery, change the battery, and of course put the battery in before you install it. And I may not have seated it, seated it correctly. And the thing is, you're going to find a lot of companies are coming out with MOS, OSP, various different acronyms for their optics ready guns. And some of them are coming at a premium over the standard price that's equal to the price of this whole thing. You look at Glock and Springfield Armory, and a lot of them are doing it. Some of them, it's only $100 more, but it varies. The gun itself is designed to be a pocket carry gun. If you have the thumb safety, that does give you one more layer of safeties for those that are more comfortable with it. But this is designed to be safe without it. It uses an inertial firing pin. So it uses a fairly heavy spring and a lighter firing pin to ensure there's not enough energy if it drops for the firing pin to light off the primer. And the hammer, the way the hammer fires, when it's in the upright position, it's just a bit off the pin, and there's not enough even mass in the hammer to fire it. It is a double action gun, so of course we did verify it. It's unloaded. It's got a medium long double action, and it's reasonably light. It's kind of in the middle. Reset is all the way out every time. And because it's a plain DA with no other SA features or any other adjustments, you do have a double strike capacity. You can keep pulling the trigger and firing the things as many times as it takes to go off. It doesn't have to cycle for the trigger to be functional again. The grip, it's got 2 finger grooves. Now if I put the 10 round magazine in it, it's got a pinky extension, which makes it 3. And there is a little pinch potential here, the way it's set up, but neither Hammer nor I were pinched while firing it. And these are, the magazines come with it. There's also a flat base plate if you want to get rid of the pinky extender. The back strap is kind of unique. It's got these little vents, and they're on either side. And then the little texture to the back. These are meant to actually act as a little bit of a cushion to kind of reduce the recoil. And the recoil is relatively comfortable on this. But what I do tend to find with this is when you grab a hold of it, your hand tends to cover these. So what it does is it creates a little bit of pressure and suction. And you end up a little tramp stamp right down your hand. So one way to find out if somebody's been firing a CPX-1 or CPX-2, hold up your hand, and if you got a little bunch of red dots down your hand, you've been firing a Sky. The later revisions, I think the CPX-3, 4, or the new DVG, I think they got rid of that. It doesn't hurt, and those little red dots go away. It's not like it hurts your hand or does any damage, but I don't think that really lives up to the expectations that they thought it did. Though I will say that the recoil on this is pretty comfortable. It's a 17.5 ounce gun as configured. Without the red dot, the regular CPX-1 and 2 is in the 15.5 ounce territory, so the red dot adds a little bit of weight, but not significant. It's a billet aluminum frame, 7075 T6, so they use good quality aluminum, and it's a stainless steel slide and a stainless steel 3.1 inch barrel. Dimensionally, this is a kind of on the slightly larger side for a pocket pistol, but it's not ridiculous. It's 5.7 inches long. It's 5.25 inches long if you just look from the flat base plate to the top of the red dot, and it's 5.75 long, or tall I mean to say, when you put all the way to the bottom of the pinky extender to the top of the red dot. So the red dot does add a little bit of height to it. And by the way, when I mention the aluminum, what I'm touching is polymer. Everything I'm touching is polymer. When I get it apart, you'll see that there's an insert frame in here. It's not designed to be removed like on a, let's say, a P320, where you can remove it and change it and stuff like that. It's more of a kind of a wrapped polymer over aluminum. But overall, they're well-constructed guns. They're nicely done. They're decently well machined. They're not precision machined, but they are decently well done. And they tend to be pretty reliable. And they're 1 inch thick, the gun itself, and then it ends up being about a little bit thicker here when you add the slide stop slide release. There are no ambi features on the gun, and there are a little bit of a cutout here on both sides to line up your thumb. So it's designed if a left-handed shooter is shooting it, they do have the thumb rest, but there's no slide stop slide release on that side of the gun. And the gun does come with a 3-year, pretty much one of those no questions asked types of warranties, which unfortunately with this gun I actually used. This is the sight that originally came with it. And if you look up in the corner, all that glass that's missing, it is a glass lens, all that glass that's missing ended up in my face. As I was shooting this, I kept getting peppered in the face, which sometimes you'll get that with powder residue and brass residue. And it wasn't until the sight actually completely failed that I realized that really what I was getting in the face is the sight slowly self-destructing. So I called Sky. It was kind of a convoluted thing. So I called Sky. Sky said that the warranty is actually through Crimson Trace on the site. Sky warrants the gun. So I had to call Crimson Trace. And I called Crimson Trace, explained what's going on. And at first they wanted to send me to Sky. And when I explained that Sky had sent me to them, she did a little research and finally figured out how it works. What they ended up doing is Crimson Trace placed an order with Sky for Sky to send me a Crimson Trace, which eventually they did. It took a couple weeks to get it, and this was pre-lockdown. So once I got it, I took the old one out, and I'm going to send this one back. They sent a postage-paid envelope. They want this one back, which I wanted to do this video first, so I wanted to get the new one, get it on, test it, do the video, and then I will send this back to them. Probably they want to see what happened with it. Hopefully this one won't befall the same fate. I'm not aware of any harm being done to this that would cause it to fail. The only thing I can possibly think of is if it's supposed to be pre-installed and instead it was in a cardboard box, it may have gotten beaten up in transit. But did end up using that warranty, and other than a short little runaround, which did get quickly resolved, I didn't really have any problem with the warranty, and they really didn't try to blame me for breaking it or anything. Once we figured out the right process, it was, okay, we'll get one on its way to you, and if you'd be kind enough to send us the old one back, kind of a thing. Overall, it's kind of an interesting combination, and if this sight does prove to be reliable, then it's going to be quite enjoyable. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart, which is relatively easy to do. There are a couple things that are different than some other guns, but I'll show you the internals. Now, one thing you want to make sure you want to do is resist the temptation to use the sight to cycle the slide. So if you're going to lock it back, kind of grab it up under here or grab it from the back and lock it with your thumb. Once you've locked it back and remove the magazine, then this is the takedown pin. And you can use the rim of a cartridge, a tool like a polymer pick or something like that, or in most cases you can actually just use your thumb, pull it out. Now the slide's under tension, so make sure you have a hold of it when you release it and it slides right off. And you'll notice something I didn't do. I didn't pull the trigger. Don't need to. And here's the hammer that I mentioned, and it sits straight up, but there's a stop. So what ends up happening with it when it fires, it hits the firing pin and bounces back just a hair, and it's a very small hammer that really requires going all the way back and firing to get any amount of energy, so that contributes to the drop safety capability. Here's that aluminum frame that's inset into the polymer, and you'll see it's got a full-length rail, mostly on both sides, and overall it's a well-constructed gun. Now, one thing to note, when you have it apart, don't pull the trigger because the hammer will slam up against, so you get a steel hammer that'll slam up against the aluminum body, and that's not something that you want to do repeatedly. It has kind of a dual captive recoil spring, so two springs kind of wound together, and here's that 3.1 inch stainless steel barrel. It's well machined, it's nicely done. Get my light to show you. See, here's the feed ramp. It's got a nice polished feed ramp and a well machined barrel. Real distinct rifling. So overall these are pretty well done. The guide rod itself is polymer with metal springs and metal rings and stops, but the overall recoil spring itself is polymer. And then when you look at the slide, which is all one piece, so it's machined out of one piece, it's not cast or anything, and it's pretty well done. And there's the firing pin there at the back. But you'll notice it doesn't have a drop safety piston like many other guns. Its drop safety is designed based on the inertial principle rather than the blocking pistons and other mechanisms. Personally, I do prefer the blocking pistons. I like something that's an absolute physical block rather than relying on inertia to do its thing. So I put the recoil spring back in. Now, putting these back together is a little different than many others. Most guns that use this lug type mechanism like this, you'll slide the slide back to a certain point where you can insert the pin and catch it. Then you slide the slide further back and rock it into place. But you'll see this doesn't have the extension arm, so it doesn't have a pin and then an arm like, let's say, on a 1911. So there's probably more than one way to do this, but I'll show you how I do this one. I line it up, and sometimes you have to wiggle the recoil spring and I lock it back. Now at this point the barrel is just kind of flopping around. But if you look at this hole, let's see if I can get it where I get some light on it. Right there, you see there's a barrel moving back and forth, and if I go further, you're starting to hit the other end of the lug. But right there is where the pin needs to go. So making sure that you have it right side up, I just use my finger to push the barrel to the right position and then put the pin in. Now I'm going to turn it so I can actually see it because it's kind of difficult to do it on camera and get it to go right. But once you do, the pin just pops right in. And make sure it goes all the way in and clicks. That way it's behind the slide and the gun is ready to operate again. So they're easy to maintain, they're easy to live with, no tools unless your fingernails aren't strong enough to pop that pin out. Really no tools are needed, and if you do need tools it'd be nothing that you wouldn't use to clean it anyway. So they're pretty easy to take care of. This gun really is designed with the intent to be a personal defense, primarily concealed carry. That's what it's targeting. It doesn't make the most fun range day gun. The long medium heavyish trigger does make it, where you have to work at it a little bit to keep on target. And the recoil is a little stouter with this than some of the others that you might be used to. You can get companies that have kits that allow you to lessen the trigger weight a little bit, But keep in mind they're not drop-ins. They do require a little skills and a little machining and tuning due to the tolerances in the gun. But even with something like that, it's still going to be on the medium long, medium heavy double action trigger. And in a small gun, sometimes those kind of triggers can make it hard to stay on target. This isn't something you take for a fun Saturday at the range. It also isn't necessarily something that you would give to a complete newbie, somebody that's never fired a gun before. But if you're looking for an inexpensive, especially optic ready concealed carry gun, this is a good choice. It's not in the league with the Walther and the Springfield Armory and Glock optics ready pistols. There's much better red dots on the market than the one that comes with it. But at the price point this is coming in at, you can enter that optics ready market for less than you might spend for an optic alone in many cases. And if nothing else, just see if you like that. Is that something that you're even interested in before you start spending the premium on the other guns along with the cost of buying the red dot? Usually most of the optics ready guns come optics ready, not optics included. This one comes optics included, truly ready. Take it out of the box, put the optic on if it came separately in the box, and rock and roll. Beyond that, these have really overall proven to be pretty reliable. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to get notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Gunstreamer, Patreon, Twitter, kind of all over the place. Thank you.
Start off close. I got it. Back to shoot.